It is my pleasure to introduce a good friend of public libraries, the president and CEO of the Urban Libraries Council, Susan Benton. Most of you have met her, and some of you have been out to dinner with her, so it's been a wonderful visit. The ULC published Partners for the Future, Public Libraries and Local Governments Creating Sustainable Communities. So she has been for a long time all about motivating local governments and working with the International City-County Management Association. Her previous work has been with organizations called the National Information Consortium and the Partner Strategies for Public Technology. So she has been all about public information and public technology. So, and for the last 3 years, she has worked for as CEO of the Urban Libraries Council, of which we have 5 or 6. So it is my pleasure to introduce Susan Benton. Thank you.
Thank you, Lamar, and I am so honored to be here. I got to tell you, I pinch myself when I'm at meetings like this. I'm not a librarian. It's my first confession of the afternoon, but I feel in so many ways that the whole arc of my professional career brings me to a meeting like today. I have been working with cities and counties since 1982, so I own every one of these gray hairs. I've worked with mayors, I've worked with city councils, county commissions, with county managers and city managers, and over the past 3.5 years have truly the honor to work with public libraries at this stage of my career, and I can't tell you what a phenomenal experience it has been for me. I get so excited when I'm at meetings like this, I almost don't know where to start. And while I've been asked to come and talk with you about the work that ULC has been doing over the last 2 years, creating a tool that we hope will be very valuable in the public library field, I want to just back up and share some of my broad observations with you about the library field as an outsider. It's a little bit dangerous. I'm on thin ice here. But I want to tell you about some of the things that I'm seeing as I talk not only with ULC members, but with individuals like yourselves who are not direct members of ULC, but I hope who still use ULC resources. I guess maybe I might even start to pick up on some of the things that Senator Carter said when he was here this morning. And my comment to him about you all being a local engine for the economy, I think that is such an incredible, important role that you play, but something that sometimes we don't think about, we in this room don't think about enough for ourselves and own, and then we don't tell others about. For the last 25 years, whether we've been consciously aware of it or not, we have been transitioning from that industrial era to the knowledge era. And it doesn't happen overnight. You all know that. We've been dealing with technology and computers and networks for a long time and still struggling to get it all right. Frankly, we'll always be doing that. But that's part of that whole transition of starting to move into the knowledge era. And when you think about going from silos and doing one thing in the industrial era, and then going into the knowledge era where you've got to have education and learning going on, what other organization in the community owns knowledge like the public library? You guys are the engine for knowledge in the knowledge arena, in the knowledge economy. So not only are we the learning institution, the knowledge institution in our organization, in our communities, but we're one of the economic engines as well. And I think it's one of those things that we need to think about and talk about with one another more, because people always think about us in very traditional ways. And one of my challenges in coming to the Urban Libraries Council, and I think frankly one of the reasons why the ULC Board of Directors hired me, was because I was not a librarian, but I saw all of the value that you bring to cities, to counties, and to the citizens that live in those areas. And so hopefully we're able to start to have kind of the scaffold of the traditional, old, antiquated image of the library and start to think about the library in a new way. But we have to get the new language around that, and we have to start to use it on a regular basis with city and county managers and all of the business leaders and all of the other leaders in our community. Susan, one of the questions that you asked Senator Carter was, where is the library budget in that state budget? And is it in the education area? And yes, it is. And I was so glad to hear him say that, but it was only seen, whenever I looked at the education budget, I saw K through 12, and then secondary education. As if education doesn't start from the moment you take your first breath until the moment you take your last breath. And all of that spectrum, we are active in, and we own. And we need to start to own and start to talk about that in a very intentional way. Everything that Elaine was talking about prior to my coming up in front of you was talking about how do we discuss and present to others everything we're doing in getting kids ready to be successful in kindergarten. Because we all know that if they're not successful by the time they're in kindergarten, I don't want to...
It's already...
All right.
Right.
Yeah, thanks. That they're not going to be successful in graduating from high school. Wonderful county manager in Florida said to me, you know, Susan, in my county we have a correction center where we have 1,500 beds, and they're always full. And I can go to that correction center, and I can pick out the grandfather, the father, now the grandson, and all three generations are there. And the one thing that they all have in common, none of them know how to read. And so my challenge is to get some money away from the correction center and put it into organizations like the library so we can break that horrible cycle. And the key is you cannot participate in the economy if you can't read. You cannot participate in the economy unless you have access to a computer in the knowledge era. So we have all of those tools inside of our doors and with our people, and we've got to make sure that we're educating people on what we do, because they don't think of us as the learning institution. They don't think of us as being vital to the local economy, and we've got to start to break that chain and re-educate the leaders so they know those things. Recently, I was at a conference where a lot of city managers were, and a city manager that I've known for a long time, San Jose, California, their library executive is retiring, and she said to me, city manager, what should we think about hiring? What are the skills that we should be thinking about? And I said, Deborah, you know, one of the things I want to tell you is this is going to be one of the most important hires that you make in your city. Because everything that the mayor is worried about, everything that the council is worried about for the city, everything that you're worried about as a city manager, your library executive is working on those exact same things. You're worried about education. Your library director is working on education and learning. You're worried about all of the people who are coming to San Jose who don't speak English and are newly arrived citizens. Your library is full of programs for the newly arrived citizens in the United States. You're worried about sustainability. You want a green economy. People expect that in Silicon Valley. Your library has lots of programs that they're doing not only inside their own buildings, but teaching citizens and small businesses about the green economy. You're worried about workforce development. They're doing workforce development. development. So everything you're doing, your library executive is doing. Now, Deborah's a smart woman, and her library director is a smart woman as well. But they hadn't talked about connecting the city's strategic goals and what the library was doing on each and every one of those things. As soon as Deborah got back to San Jose, she asked Jane, the library director, to give her some visuals so she could see what the library was doing. Jane's very smart. Within 2 days, she had back in front of Deborah just a graphic that showed every one of the city's strategic goals and what the library was doing and who they were partnering with. Now, Deborah said, you know what, we actually don't even have our strategic goals identified. And Jane said, you know, it's not hard to figure out. If I just look at what's on the city council's agenda on a regular basis, if I look what the mayor's talking about, if I look what you're talking about, I know what you're worried about. You're worried about the economy. You're worried about education. You're worried about the sustainability. You're worried about public safety. So what am I doing to help you in your work? And that's exactly what each and every one of us needs to be doing in our libraries. What are we doing to help our leaders accomplish what they need to accomplish for the community? Because frankly, those are our goals as well, right? But we don't talk about it like that enough. So that's our challenge. That's all of our challenge, and it's not easy. Because unless we do that, and here's my concern, unless we do that, we are not seen as relevant. And if we're not seen as relevant, we don't get the budgets that we need. So we've got to get just more directed, more intentional in the words we use in presenting to our leaders what we do, because we're doing all the right things. You are doing all the right things. That's why I feel so lucky to be working with you, because you're doing everything that needs to be done to make a better tomorrow for the kids who live in your communities, for the families who are living in your community, for the small businesses that are getting off the ground. You're doing all the right things, but no one knows about it. And we've got to make sure that they know about it so that you have the resources you need to do even more. As you might imagine, I get on a plane a fair amount of time. And I've been doing this for the last 30 years. And it's always been a little bit of a game that I play. I'll walk out of the airport, go to the curb, grab a cab. And in the past, I always said, take me to City Hall or take me to the county administration building. And oftentimes, the cab driver would just look at me blankly. And I wouldn't give them the address because I wanted to see if they knew. The cab driver would just look at me blankly. And they oftentimes wouldn't know what the City Hall was or the county administration building. Always had the address, not a problem. Now, I get to that curve, I jump in the cab, and I say, could you please take me to the central library? They turn around. Why do you want to go to the library? They know where the central library is. Then when I tell them that I work with libraries, they say, what do you do? Well, and I'll say, well, do you use your library? And I got to tell you, cab drivers all over the United States and their families use the library. Now, in some ways, that's very nice, right? Let me give you an example. I'm in Minneapolis. I'm going out to one of the more suburban libraries. I get in the cab, jump in the back seat. Cab driver says, where are you going to go? I tell him, and he said, that's so interesting. He said, that's my family's library. And I said, oh, that's great. I said, so how does your family use the library? He said, we've been here for 2 years. We came here from Cairo. He said, it's the Arab Spring. He said, we have family and friends who are on Tahrir Square. We're really worried about them. We don't have enough money to have a computer at home or internet access. We go to the public library to be able to communicate with our family back in Cairo. We have 2 sons. They're 8 and 10. We want them to do well in school. 4 days a week, my wife meets them after school. She takes them to this library, and they have homework help. At that point, we're sitting at a light. He turns around and he smiles at me. He said, they're straight A students. My wife and I, our English is okay, but it's not as good as it should be. We check out books, we read them together, we're working on our English vocabulary. Actually, I'm a fairly well-educated man in Egypt. I should be able to get a better job in the United States than driving a cab. When my sons are in homework help, my wife is on the computer looking for job opportunities for me. How many ways is that public library helping that one family? And that's just what he ticked off in a 15-minute cab drive. That's what you do. That's what you do. Now, it may not be an Egyptian who's telling you that story. It could be someone who's lived in this country for many years. But there's another family that can say the exact same things about what you do. I hope you wear that really proudly. It makes me proud to work with you. But I also hope that you understand that we need to tell people what we're doing, because most people think we just have books and we're quiet. Because when I talk to city managers and mayors, that's what they think. And I can't be enough places to change the image. So you have to be working on that, and you can't be enough places to change the image. So you have to work with your staff, and you have to work with your trustees, because they have to be doing that too. So all of this kind of gets to EDGE. EDGE is about creating a tool for public libraries to be able to assess the technology that the public is using. That's one of the major goals for this tool. In every organization that I've worked in over the last 30 years, we never know whether we've got the right technology. And I bet it's the same in your libraries, right? Do we have the right technology? Do we have the right training? Do we have the right software? And it's always a guessing game. So 11 organizations have come together to create this evaluation or assessment tool that public libraries across the United States can use to do a self-assessment. It's a voluntary self-assessment. It's meant to be aspirational in that it kind of shows a breadth of levels that one might attain in different areas. And it's meant to be taken on a regular basis. The organizations are coming together to create this, and we've been working on it for a year and a half. ULC is leading the partnership, but the ALA is one of our partners, PLA, Web Junction, TechSoup. 2 universities do a lot of great work with libraries, University of Washington, University of Maryland. My old association that I worked with before I came to the Urban Libraries Council, the International City County Management Association, is part of this. The Gates Foundation has been marvelous in helping to fund the development of the initiative. And the 3 state organizations have been along on the development of the benchmarks as well. That's what we call the benchmarks. California, Oklahoma, and Texas. So we've got a wonderful group of people who have been working hard over the last 2.5 or year and a half to create benchmarks that we hope to roll out next year. Let me see if I can get through this. Okay. The idea is that EDGE will help you identify where you are in terms of kind of the spectrum of technology that's available. That in addition to that, it'll be able to help you plan for future technology, because it will kind of give you clues to what's coming up next. And that it will not only do that, but after you take the assessment, it would enable you to engage not only your internal staff about look at where we're at, look where we're strong, where we're less strong, but also engage community leaders as well. So in addition to being an evaluative tool for yourself, we really have been thinking about this ability to help explain to people what we do and use this as one of the tools for helping to change and change the image of libraries and help educate people on what we do. So here's what we expect the EDGE resources to include. It's going to be a toolkit, and it'll be an online assessment. So you will get you'll register to use it, and you'll be able to go online, and hopefully in about a 2-hour period of time, you'll be able to fill out a form that would give you information on how you're using your technology to meet community needs. So embedded in this, we have particularly looked at how technology is being used in these areas. How is it being used to enable people to connect with one another electronically, right? How is it being used for economic development and workforce? Workforce development? How are your public access computers being used for education, for health literacy, for e-government related things? So enabling us to kind of see, all right, what are we doing in our presentation or our the ability of having our computers available to the public? How is the public using it? So not only we know how the public's using it, but then we can also explain to others how the public are using our computers. In addition to that, there will be benchmarks that relate to how we are communicating what we're doing with other leaders across the community. So we're going to be having benchmarks that relate to being able to identify the partnerships you have and how you're marketing the library. And then the third area is on the organization and the management of your technology. So what are your policies and procedures around technology? Do you have a technology strategic plan? How often do your staff get upgraded in terms of their training around technology? And again, the number of benchmarks, we're just finalizing, going from beta to version 1. We expect the number to be around 10 to 12 benchmarks when we get done. And so we hope it not to be too arduous in terms of the ability for you all to use the benchmarks, but that the results will give you a way, again, to look at how you're doing inside your library, have a discussion with staff, and then also be able to present that to community leaders. So in the toolkit is this online assessment tool. There's a resource guide. So if there are some areas where you're not as strong as you'd like to be, we will have listed all sorts of resources where you can go and get support in that area. The third thing that's on this list is an executive tool. And the executive tool is really meant to take the report. There will be a report that comes out of your online assessment to translate that into a one-page document that you could share with your county manager, or you could share with county commissioners, or perhaps you could share with your business leaders, that takes that information about how the computers are being used, particularly in the areas of economic development, workforce development, health literacy, e-government, all of those things that we need people to know about that we're doing that they don't today. We expect that there will be training, and this is oftentimes where we'll be talking with people like Lamar about how we can partner with the state. So there are things that we can do to help support you in terms not only the use of the EDGE tool and toolkit, but also how you can get stronger in all of these areas. And Jay, whenever I was listening to your presentation and the survey work that you've done in technology was right there at the top, it seems to me that there's lots of opportunities for partnering here. We hope to be providing you good communication tools that will help you in terms of your presentation to leaders outside of the library, and case studies that will give you information about how others have used the EDGE initiative. So it's a toolkit. It's still in development. We've got over the last 2 days actually in Seattle, the partnership has been meeting and they've been finalizing the benchmarks. And the next thing that we're going to be working on is finalizing the executive tool so that it's ready to go at the same time whenever we roll out the benchmarks. we've done a little bit of pilot work on the using Edge in 4 communities this past summer, and I want to tell you about 2 of the pilot libraries. One is Miami, Oklahoma. One of the things that we've gotten a lot of questions on is like, well, is this going to have any relevance for me because I'm a smaller library? Miami, Oklahoma serves a population of about 14,000. They were very anxious to use it because they've been spending some time over the past year with trying to work with their city manager, new city manager, bringing him up to speed on what the library is doing. They did the online assessment, and then out of that online assessment, they identified 3 areas where they want to grow stronger. One is digital literacy, and that is how they are helping individuals in the community be better at using technology. Frankly, the phrase digital literacy is not going to be a phrase that we end up using on the executive tool, because for most individuals, elected officials, appointed officials, it would be clear to say teaching people to use a computer rather than digital literacy. We want to make this as straightforward as possible. The second bullet that they presented to their leaders was aligning their work with community priorities. And then the third area was making sure that their staff have the expertise that they need. One of the things that came out of their presentation when they presented this to the city manager, they also had someone there from United Way who had no idea of the work that they were doing in terms of reading, and that came up in the conversations that they had. And so now the United Way and the public library are seeing themselves as key partners going forward. So again, we're hoping this is a tool that you all can use not only for internal evaluation, but for creating the knowledge of helping to educate people in your community about what you're doing so that they can be aligning their resources with yours. In New Brunswick, Texas, this is a community of about 60,000. Again, they were very interested in telling their leaders about how they are helping community members develop digital content and creating new partnerships across the community, as well as building more inclusiveness with the just making sure that more people are being able to use technology. Now, again, when I read through these bullets, the words that we used this first time out on our pilot, it made us understand that we've got to get clearer and, in fact, more simple, straightforward. But I can tell you, for both of the pilots, the city managers in both of these organizations had an aha moment about what their libraries were doing. And in New Brunswick, the librarian has now been asked to join a task force that's looking at technology across the city. She had never been invited to any citywide task force before. And so I think it's just those opportunities to try again to present what we're doing and making sure that we're making the connections with key folks that we need to. Some of the things that also have come up in terms of what the librarians have said to us that has become of value to them, it's enabled them to engage leadership in a better way. They're having much better discussions about how they're going to be allocating new resources, understanding where they are on the spectrum, on the benchmarks. It gives them an idea where they're strong, where they're not so strong. And also an ability to understand where they are with their peers. When more people are taking it, we know that will be very valuable, and identifying new ways that you can be increasing your effectiveness through best practices. So that's a snapshot of EDGE as it exists today. Let me open it for questions. No questions. Any worries?
Okay, how do you see the state library agency providing support and assistance? Or is this designed to be used directly at the local level? Are there things we can do to assist in?
And, you know, Lamar, I think that we'll have to kind of like find our way through this. I think we anticipate that in many states we will be working with the state librarian. You know, there's a lot of differences between states, and so some states may not have the goal of having all of their libraries do an assessment like this, so maybe less interested in this. But we're hopeful that Georgia may be one that's very interested in using EDGE statewide that will enable you to get information, will have valuable information for you when you're dealing with the state legislature. Yeah. Yeah. So the report will be multi-page, and the online assessment is still it's in software development right now. It'll be fairly comprehensive information on every one of the benchmarks, and what we're hoping to do is be able to create enough of a population or cohort of individuals who are using the EDGE initiative so you have a chance to see where you are based on what other peers are doing that are in your kind of similar size. So hopefully that helps answer some of it. The other thing that I want to say is that oftentimes in doing evaluation, folks are kind of quick to say, well, we did really, really well. So we're kind of at the A level. And we're really seeing this not as an A, B, or C level, or platinum, gold, or silver. We don't know how we're going to kind of show where you are in different benchmarks, but I've been thinking of it more as kind of a karate black belt, white belt sort of thing, because there's no good or bad in this. It's just like where you are on the spectrum, and we're all going to be changing over each year. So some years we may be stronger in some areas, other years less strong, but stronger yet in another area. Christian.
One of the smaller ones you will see, and I was asking that focus library institutional, not even knowing what my focus would be as, and hopefully to really make me think about what I'm doing in my library and focusing on what we need to do. It comes with it, as you ask the question, there's the kind of question that you don't actually be technical staff to do. You can do it yourself. I didn't just took one afternoon and just only about half an hour to run through. But it gave me some ideas of what we could do at the library to be easy to add on. So I understand the idea of wanting to do my course, but really, it's an excellent planning tool. And a quick way to focus what you're doing, but how it's used public realm.
It does, and thank you for saying that. And one of the other things I want to mention to you, in terms of the online assessment and report you get back, our intention is that you don't present that whole report to your local leaders. It's too much information for them. Elected officials need bullets, right? And that's why those bullets that I showed you from Miami and New Brunswick, but you can choose whatever you want to present to them. So if in your county or your community, education is really important to your local leaders, then you might want to present how you did on the education-related benchmark, because that's what you know is going to resound with them. That's what you know is important to them. Or if health is really important, then you show how the community is using the public access the computers to gain health information, health literacy. So you get to pick and choose what you think is most important to present. And I think, again, then that comes back to us being smart about what's keeping our mayors, our county executives, our county managers, county commissioners up at night. What's making them work? Because our challenge is not to talk about ourselves, but to talk about them and what they're worried about. Because then when they understand that we get what they're concerned about, what they're working hard at, and that we will align much of our work to support theirs, they're more likely to support us as well. Other questions? I was in a city this past summer, and doing a presentation on public libraries, and the Chamber of Commerce president came up to me afterwards, and we were talking about public libraries. And he said, you know, in our city we feel very proud because over the last 12 months we convinced 3 corporations to relocate here. 1 large, 2 medium-sized. But fairly quickly, each one of those corporate executives came to our mayor and to me and said, you misrepresented your workforce. We thought you had more talented, a better educated workforce than you have. And what that chamber president was saying was, I didn't get before how important the library could be in helping to support our development of our workforce, and how important the library is in our whole learning ecosystem in our city. And our public schools can't do it alone. And our technical schools and our community college can't do it alone. And what he said was really true, and you guys know this too, that the public library in that community is probably the most trusted institution. People, no matter what their economic income is, no matter what their race is, people feel comfortable and safe coming into the public library. And that's really important when you're wanting to encourage learning. So you, again, have a very unique role to play, and hopefully you're able to own it as much as possible. This is